every day for a long, long time. So she went to check him out. And she went to the western wall, and there he was, walking slowly up to the holy site. And she watched him pray for about 45 minutes, and then he turned to leave, and he was using a cane and moving slowly, and she approached him for an interview, and she asked him, "And what is your name?" "Morris Feinberg," he said. "Sir, how long have you been coming to the western wall to pray?" 60 years. 60 years. That's amazing. What do you pray for? This is what he said. "I pray for peace between the Christians, Jews, and Muslims. I pray for all the wars and all the hatred to stop. I pray for all our children to grow up safely as responsible adults and to love their fellow man. I pray that politicians tell us the truth and put the interest of the people ahead of their own interest." And she says, "How do you feel after doing this for 60 years? And he replied, "Like I'm praying to a frickin' wall." Now, I know you're thinking, how's she going to tie that into that Sunday service? So last month, I kind of had a little theme in my mind about God being in the house, our house. And I like the theme so much that this month my theme that you don't know about is that you too can be a mystic. And so, if you're praying to a wall, think you're going to feel very good? No. Because where do we pray? We pray to the God inside of us. And that kind of prayer feels a lot different than praying to a freaking wall. I've been taking a class, or I took a class that used some Ernest Holmes material and used this little book called This Thing Called You. And for those of you who are in Unity who have not read Ernest Holmes, this little book is filled with affirmations. And it's a lovely little book. And there was one that spoke to me about today. The Spirit within me is God. The living Spirit Almighty is within me now. Spirit is the sustaining principle of my life. I open my mind to its influx. I open my consciousness to its inflowing. The Spirit within you is God. The living Spirit Almighty is within you now. Spirit is the nurturing principle of your life. You open your mind to its influx. You open your consciousness to its inflowing. Inside of every one of us is this deep, deep longing to know God at a deeper level, to commune with, to converse with, to have a relationship with. And I remember back when I was in my 20s and a single mom, and I had just kind of, was stepping my toes into Unity, and I had read a book about treasure mapping. And I treasure mapped for the perfect man. And at the same time, I was also treasure mapping for the perfect body and, the perfect job and the perfect car. And I went to a Unity church, and I don't know where. And I heard a minister say something, and I don't remember who it was. it sort of went this way. All of this stuff that you want is merely a sign for what you want to fill that hole in your heart. And nothing that you see out here will fill that hole. No car, no body, no job, and no man. You have to get filled up here first. And I started on my quest of filling up here. And I actually have to say, most of you know my treasure map for a man worked out pretty good. There is that innate yearning to connect with, to commune with, to live in the awareness of this higher presence that we call God. And we want to do just what that song says. We want to dive right in. And I want to begin with the idea that sometimes the world out here grabs us away from that desire. I'm going to share a story with you about a yogi, and it's out of the Hindu tradition. And the yogi's guru left him on a riverbank with a bowl so he could beg for his food and a loincloth. And so he would walk into the village and he would beg for food, and then he'd go back and sit on the riverbank and he would meditate for the rest of the day. About the third day in, he woke up and his loincloth had been chewed up by a rat. So with great embarrassment, that day he had to beg for both food and a loincloth. And once again that night the rat chewed it up. What was he to do? You know, it was pretty unseemly for a yogi to be out begging for a loincloth. So he got a kitten to chase the rat. But the kitten was hungry. And soon the yogi had to beg for milk. And it's a little embarrassing to beg for milk for your kitten, so he found a stray cow, a sign from God. And all went well until the summer came and all the grass, all the hay burned up. And so he had to beg for fodder for his cow. And that's pretty embarrassing too. So, you know, he had to plant crops. And what he found is he was spending so much time farming, he wasn't meditating. So he hired laborers to tend his crops. But you know, they needed supervision. So he decided that he would get a wife. But you know what? She didn't want to live on the riverbank under a tree. So he built her a house. And it needed to be a big house because pretty soon, guess what? She got pregnant. You got it. And so he grew fat and wealthy by the banks of the river. And one day when he was sitting there meditating and resting, a familiar figure approached. It was his guru. And his guru survived the whole scene just going on. And he said, student, is that you? Didn't I not leave you under this fig tree 5 years ago to contemplate God with nothing but a begging bowl and a loincloth? And the yogi bowed his head and gestured to his vast estate and said, Revered teacher, I know it seems hard to understand, but truly, this is the only way I could keep my loincloth. Can any of you relate to that? You know, we have these intentions of communing and conversing and spending time with God, and life gets in the way. But if you and I want true peace, true prosperity, deep commitment, deep contentment, satisfaction, if we desire to fill that space of longing within our hearts, we have to find our connection with God. And for that to happen, you and I need to become mystics. Take a breath. How does that feel? I have to be a mystic. Are you saying I have to go up to a mountaintop or live by the riverside under a tree? You know, we have this idea that mystics are exalted ones. They're saints. They're holy men and women. They're sages and gurus who do nothing but spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, meditating on the meaning of life. But I believe that's a misconception. This is not a quote out of Jim Rosemergy's book, Even Mystics Have to Pay the Bills. It's kind of a compilation of my thoughts out of that book. A mystic is not a mysterious person, but he is one who has a deep inner sense of life in his unity with the whole. A mystic is someone who perceives truth without mental process, meaning they don't have to think about it. They perceive it. They arrive at a spiritual realization, heart level. The mystic senses an atmosphere of God. The mystic senses the greater truth, a greater reality, infinite as a divine being. In the book, Faith is Your Fortune, Neville wrote, consciously claim yourself to be that which you seek. Appropriate the consciousness of that which you see, and you too will know the status of true mystic. Appropriate the consciousness of that which you see. I believe that means unity. And that's what I think we're doing when we say, the Spirit within me is God. The Spirit within you is God. The living Spirit Almighty is within me. The living Spirit Almighty is within you now. There's a book called God is a Verb, and written by Rabbi David Cooper. And he wrote that whenever he sat down with holy men and women, whether they were Buddhist monks, Native American shamans, or Catholic priests, and they shared their mystical insights and experiences, that they all said the same things. Different words. Yeah. Different focus for different times, different cultures, different people, but the same thing. And that message is that there is this inner place, this inner being that we have to be aware of, that we can awaken to. We don't have to run around looking. We just have to awaken. 500 BCE, Siddhartha walked around on this earth, and he astounded people by his presence. And they asked, not who are you, but what are you? Are you an angel? No, he said. Are you God? No. I am simply one who is awake. And he became known as the awakened one. And that's what Buddha means, the awakened one. We have something so profound within us that all we have to do is awaken to it, become present to it, become alive to it. And it's that simple. Amazing, isn't it? It's so simple. It's here, it's now, and all I have to do is wake up to it. But do we try to complicate it? Last week, Maggie had a slide that made it really complicated for me. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson were on a camping trip, and they lay down in the night, and Holmes said, "Watson, what do you see?" And Watson said, "I see millions and millions of stars." "And what does that tell you?" said Holmes. "Well, astronomically," Watson says, "it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets. Theologically, it tells me that God and His universe are infinite. Meteorologically, it tells me that we are going to have a beautiful day tomorrow." Feeling rather self-satisfied with what he had come up with, all those angles he came up with so quickly, he turned to Holmes and says, "Well, what does it tell you?" Holmes said, "Well, it tells me somebody stole our tent." We try to make it complicated, but it's really that simple. Power within us. You are spirit. You are the activity of God expressing as you. And every experience of life is an opportunity for us to take the steps that lead toward the fulfillment of our potential. Mysticism recognizes that God is in all. And it is the practice of seeing, sensing, feeling, and experiencing God within and God without. It is the practice of letting God direct and inspire. Spur of the moment. Maggie, would you be willing to share what you shared at prayer the other day about putting your shoes on?
Oh, sure. Give me a microphone, I can share anything. I can't remember the context of our conversation. Oh, it was during prayer. It was during noon prayer. And any of you that know me know that my mind is going very fast. There are some good things about that, and there are some bad things about that. One of them is that I have a hard time settling down to pray or meditate when I'm by myself. So I was sitting down in the morning, getting dressed, getting ready to go out and exercise, and I have these massive new running shoes that are supposed to be good for me, and I paid a lot of money for. But it takes a lot to get into these shoes, and since I have arthritis, it takes a lot to get into these shoes because it hurts me to bend down. So I bent down, put the socks on, and as I was bending down to reach for one of these massive shoes, all of a sudden, I just went into prayer. It was the weirdest thing. I settled back in the chair, just like this, with my hand outstretched, and I was just in this other place, and my eyes fastened on a chair in my living room that I've had for years and years. I brought it with me here from Buffalo when I moved back in 1996 or whenever I came here. And it's been through many iterations. It's a bamboo chair. It used to be natural colored. It used to be painted brown. Now it's painted black. It's got different cushions. And I just I regarded that chair. I wasn't really looking at it. I wasn't really seeing it, but I saw the people that cut the bamboo, and I felt the people that shaped the bamboo into the shape of a chair, and I felt all the people that manufactured it and packaged it and put it into a store, and I felt myself buying it back in Buffalo and falling in love with it and making the decision to crate it and bring it to Melbourne with me. It was the only piece of furniture I brought with me, and it was all in the like the twinkling of an eye. with my hand still outstretched to put that shoe on my foot, I was just blown away into this place where I was connected to all of that. The focus was the chair, but it was a deep connection of many layers of relationship. I was so awed by it, I shared it with Beth at prayer, because I realized as we were doing the noon prayer that that's what that was. And I, for some reason, since I have so much trouble doing it myself, I had been done by prayer. It had been, prayer did me, and it was an awesome experience. Thank you for letting me remember that again.
When Maggie told us that story, and I was thinking about mystics, that was a mystical experience. And if we give ourselves permission and time, that's what we have. That sense of oneness, that sense of union, that sense of belonging. Elijah found the voice of God was not in the wind. It wasn't in the earthquake. It wasn't in the fire. Because all of those are of the intellect. He found it in the still, small voice within. So yesterday I was going to run by Sam's. Is there ever a misnomer, run by Sam's? To pick up a prescription. And I drove in, and as I drove in, it was pretty hot. And I had the thought, God, I need a shady parking space. And I drove up a row, and there was a parking spot, and inside it said, no, not that one. And I'm thinking, oh, pretty damn good parking space, pardon me. It was a pretty good parking space. And I'm going to pass that parking space up, don't have to walk very far. So I turned down the next row. And as I did, somebody pulled out from under a tree. Teeny tiny example. The first parking place was closer. The second place was better. It's cool. Buddha said, let your mind be clear like a still forest pond. Several weeks ago, I did a meditation where we floated on a forest pond. And today I would like for us to do another meditation, a still forest pond. And I'd like for you to be there floating with me. And I'm going to ask the guys, can y'all put on the meditation music, please? So I'll invite you to close your eyes. And just relax. Relax. And let yourself just float in this pond. And notice that the surface of this pond is really not very still. There are all sorts of disturbances. If the surface could be pelted by rain, it can be frozen by cold temperatures, it can be thawed by warm temperatures. It can be churned up by the wind. Leaves and dirt litter the surface. All the disturbances to the pond are visible at this level. You know that the surface of your mind is also where all the activity and all that the disturbances exist. We might call this level the chatter level. At this level, 60,000 thoughts a day breeze across your mind. The chatter is about finances, deadlines, health, children, appointments, shopping, retirement, vacation choices, world unrest, the shutting down of our government, the starting up of our government, conflict at work, relationships, last night's dinner, tonight's dinner. The thoughts are endless. And of course, it's at this level that our ego lives with all of its hurts and upsets and judgments. But we know that just because the surface is filled with all this mad activity, it doesn't mean that that activity is going on below the surface. Surface litter does not make the pond impure. So let your body just relax. And overcoming any thought of fear, just let yourself sink below the surface, knowing that you can breathe easily and effortlessly. And as you sink, notice that just a little ways down, and already the disturbances on top have little impact. There might be a storm up above, but it's present. It's not felt here. It's likewise when you go below the surface of your mind. You leave the ego's chatter behind. Here, the constant entering and exiting of thoughts is replaced with a different kind of thinking. You have more control of the thinking process, through which you are still a long way from the silence of the deep. But it is more focused. You may find at this level your thoughts are on analyzing. Those silent comments that you make that assess your progress or your lack thereof. Someone else's progress or lack thereof. Even as you proceed in this meditation process. But move your attention back to your body and see it sinking through this second level and leaving your analyzing mind behind. And at level 3, we're well below the surface. And here we feel the chatter lessening, as well as the need to analyze everything. Allow your mind to see the flow of how things are all connected and held together. At this level, begin to experience your spiritual nature. At this deep level below the surface, accept that people are unique and that you may not understand how or why everyone behaves the way they do, including yourself. But here, there is no need to analyze. It's much more rewarding to just surrender to the flow. Feel the flow of acceptance, followed by gratitude. As you surrender to the flow, let your body just sink down a little deeper. Sinking down to the level of stillness. We're getting to the place where we are actually experiencing the shutting down of dialogue. In this place, thoughts begin to disappear as we sink into pure awareness. Notice the silence of awareness as fewer thoughts swim through. mind becomes quieter, you may notice joy beginning to well up within inside. Joy is the sign of the presence of God. It's this level of stillness that you begin to experience joy, that you begin to experience the presence of God. And yet there's one more level that we can sink to. We can sink to the level of field of all possibilities. This place is beyond mere quieting of the mind. Here is the place within where you empty your mind of all thought and you just experience the stillness. This place is very hard to describe in words. Here, rather than focusing on any thought, your inner awareness is on that space that exists between thoughts. It is the field of all possibility. There are no distractions here, no separation, only consciousness. Pure consciousness merged into one. The great mystics have agreed that the soul is on the pathway of experience, of self-discovery, that it's on its way back to the Father's house, and that every soul will ultimately reach its heavenly home. Here in the silence, you are home. Feel the welcome. Gently and easily bring your attention back to this room, back to this time and this place. Coming back with the knowledge that yes, you too can be a mystic. Thank you.